In this video, we're going to talk about retirement spending, and specifically, we're going to talk about how to plan 3 phases of retirement spending: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. Now, we're going to show you why you should be planning your retirement spending this way, but at the end of the video, we're also going to show you 2 reasons why you need to watch out. So 2 warnings if you're using the go-go, slow-go, and no-go phases of retirement spending. We're also going to show you a specific example of how we can help a couple in retirement spend more in early retirement by taking this 3-phase approach to retirement spending. Now let's talk a little bit about retirement spending. So the wrong way to plan retirement spending is something called just flat retirement spending. Now this is often what you'll see in a retirement plan because a lot of financial planning and retirement planning software doesn't have the flexibility to do different phases of retirement spending. So what you'll see in a lot of sort of generic financial plans is just a flat level of retirement spending throughout all of retirement. So this example, we're maybe spending $72,000 a year in early, mid, and late retirement. And that's a typical financial plan that you'll see, but it's not the right way to go about things. Now, there are exceptions, of course. There might be a good reason to have flat retirement spending, and we'll talk about that towards the end. But in this case, this probably isn't the best way to plan in this particular situation. Now, we could go one step further and we could say there's a bit of discretionary spending on top of core retirement spending. So this at least is getting a little bit more detailed. We have core retirement spending of $60,000 a year. We've identified that there's at least some discretionary spending of $12,000 a year. So their overall spending goal in this case is $72,000 a year, which is the combination of their core retirement spending. So things like property taxes, groceries, utilities, things that aren't going to change much from year to year, month to month, and then they've got their discretionary spending, which they can use for travel or entertainment or hobbies or other things. So at least this is a little bit better, but it's still not the best way to plan retirement spending. So ideally what we want to be doing is we want to be planning retirement spending in 3 phases. So we want to have the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. In the go-go years, we're a bit more active. It's early retirement. We're taking advantage of that time and energy, and we're maybe doing more travel, entertainment, hobbies, and we're spending more in those early years because that's the time that we can get the most advantage out of that money. In the slow-go years, we're maybe starting to dial back a little bit on that extra activity and spending. We might not be doing international travel as much. We might be doing a little bit more local travel, or we might not be doing as many trips. We might be only doing 1 trip a year instead of 2 or 3 trips a year. But in the slow-go years, we're spending a little bit less than in those go-go years, and we're a little bit less active. And maybe that's between age 70 and 80, but of course, there's some flexibility with those ages. And then the no-go years are the later years in retirement, when we're maybe not spending so much on discretionary travel or hobbies or entertainment, and we just have a core level of retirement spending that we're trying to achieve, and maybe a little bit of extra here and there. So when we think about this, we still have a core level of retirement spending all the way through. I mean, property tax is not going to change in real dollars. It will with inflation, but in real dollars, not a big difference. Groceries, probably not going to be a big change in these 3 different phases of retirement spending. Utilities, again, not big change. So our core retirement spending is going to be pretty much the same all the way through. What we're really talking about here is the discretionary portion of this spending. And that discretionary portion, we want to shift from the no-go years into the go-go years. So we're shifting money from those years that we're probably not really going to be spending that much anyway, and we're reallocating that to those early years when we can take the most advantage of those extra dollars. So here we're still spending the overall same amount throughout those 3 phases. The total spending hasn't changed. In the middle years, we're spending $72,000. In the late years, it's $63,000. But we've taken that $9,000 a year that would have been in that sort of flat retirement spending assumption. We've taken that $9,000 a year and we've reallocated to early retirement where we can get the most out of it. So in those early retirement years, before age 70, we're planning to spend $81,000 a year in this example. And this really helps us get the most out of retirement spending. We're getting the most value out of it because we're putting more in those early retirement years when we can really take advantage of those extra dollars. Now, one of the things to watch out for is if you don't have a lot of discretionary spending in your plan. So here we've got core retirement spending. We've identified that we've got quite a bit of discretionary spending on top of that, But if your plan doesn't have a lot of discretionary spending, then you may not have as extreme phases of retirement spending as this example. So you might not be changing by 9,000 or so per year or per phase. You might have smaller changes in the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. So the big thing to watch out for is that your core retirement spending isn't going to change much. And so you really need to know what your core retirement spending is before you go and add the different phases of retirement spending on top of that. So think about this as discretionary spending. That's what the three phases represent. Your core retirement spending, you need to have a good idea of what that is. And you need to know if your plan can support at least that core level of retirement spending throughout the entire retirement period. Now, the second thing we got to watch out for when we're using the three-phase approach to retirement spending, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, is we need to watch out for sequence of returns risk. So sequence of returns risk is really the annual returns that we're receiving each year on our investment portfolio. The risk in early retirement is that if we have a bad sequence of investment returns, and those are real returns, so it could be poor investment returns, or it could be high inflation rates, or it could be a combination of the two. But if we have a poor period of investment returns in early retirement, that sequence of returns is very important. And so when we're doing the go-go, slow-go, and no-go retirement spending phases, you really need to test your plan to make sure that you're not going to run out of money in early retirement because of how high you've planned your go-go years of spending. So let's take a look at this example, and we'll run through how we can test this within the Adviice platform. Okay, so let's get started. Let's first familiarize ourselves with this situation, with this couple. I think we've got Mike and Mary here. So let's go take a look at some of their discovery information so we can get to know a little bit more about the way they're planning. So their initial retirement plan here is that flat retirement spending assumption. So they've got from age 60 to 90, they've just retired, they're both age 60. Mary and Mike have a 30-year retirement period they're planning for, and they're spending $72,000 in this base case, and we're gonna see if we can help them improve the amount of money that they're spending in early retirement. But let's take a look at this base case first. So they've got 60 to age 90, $72,000 a year. And then let's take a look at their net worth and assets. So it looks like they've got $700,000 in RRSPs between the two of them, split fairly equally. Great. We've got TFSA, so $150,000 each, $300,000 in total, and a bit of non-registered investment. So they've got about $80,000, it looks like, maybe in a joint account, so split equally, $40,000 each, maybe with a bit of capital gains there. So their cost base is a little bit lower, so they've had a bit of investment returns on that non-reg account. Overall, they've got a home here, so they've got a $900,000 home, which is great for late retirement, great asset to fall back on, and they've got about $2 million total net worth. So in a good position. Let's also take a look at their CPP and OAS estimate. So their estimate here at age 65, $14,000, and they have equal CPP. We've just assumed equal CPP in this case. So if they start at age 60, they're getting $10,000 a year. If they start at age 65, it's $14,000 a year. And one of the benefits of the Adviice platform is that it's doing a dynamic CPP calculation for us. So it's including those 5 extra years of zero earnings in that $14,000. So they're not quite getting the same amount that you would expect because those 5 zero earning years are kind of dragging on that CPP benefit a little bit. So one of the reasons why you don't want to use your Service Canada estimate, it's not quite accurate if you're retiring early. Now in this case, they're going to get about $20,000 a year if they delay until age 70, and that's what they're planning to do. They want to delay until age 70, their CPP benefit, but they'll start old age security at age 65. So the nice thing is once they get to 70, they're going to have $57,000 a year, but we need to bridge that gap from 60 to 70 using their investment assets. So let's take a look at their initial version of their projections. Now we saw before this looks quite good. So they draw down their non-registered first, then they're drawing from their registered accounts. They're managing tax quite well in retirement here, and maybe in late retirement they're drawing on their TFSA, but that's the last thing they'll draw from in retirement. Overall net worth goes down quite rapidly until they get CPP started at age 70, and then it starts to flatline. So overall their success rate's quite good at 93%. Essentially 7% of historical periods would run out of money by late retirement, but overall they're doing quite well in terms of their base plan. But let's see if we can do a little bit better, because right now they're assuming $72,000 a year all the way throughout retirement, and those dollars in late retirement are not going to bring as much value as they would if they were spent in early retirement. So let's change this. Let's do it right here, right now. We're going to change their spending assumptions to have more spending in the early years, $72,000 in the mid years, and then less in the later years. So let's go do that. So we're going to go up here to expenses, and we're going to copy this retirement snapshot. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to edit this, and we're going to call this the go-go years. And we're going to change that until age 69. So 60 to 69, 10 years inclusive. And then we're going to copy this, and we're going to call this the slow-go years. And this is going to be from age 70 to 79. So we got another 10-year snapshot. And then we're going to copy this again, and we're going to say this is the no-go years. So we've got 3 phases of retirement spending now, and this is going to be age 80 until age 90 here. So same spending now, $72,000, but we've got our 3 phases of retirement spending, and we want to adjust the spending here. So the mid phase, we're not going to change, but that late phase, we don't need quite as much spending. So we're going to go down. We're not going to change their home expenses at all. That's all going to stay the same. Property tax, utilities, that's not going to change at all. Even their vehicle replacement, not really going to change. We're assuming they still have at least 1 vehicle in retirement. But what's going to change is some of their discretionary spending. So here, maybe we leave restaurants and entertainment. Maybe they're still going out for dinner at the same frequency. But let's change vacation and travel. Instead of $500 a month for each of them, which is about $12,000 a year, we're just going to make it $125 a month for each of them, which is about $3,000 a year. So instead of spending $12,000 a year, it's now $3,000 a year. What we're going to do is we're going to shift that $375 a month for each of them. We're going to shift it to the early retirement phase. So instead of $500, we're going to do $875 here and $875 here. That's the only change we're going to make. We could also do changes to restaurants and entertainment. It could be clothing or personal care. We can make other changes to miscellaneous as well. But let's just do something simple like this. So now we've got $81,000 in those early years. We've got $72,000, the same that we had before in those mid years. But in the late retirement years, we've got $63,000. Now let's take a look at what happens to their overall projection. So here they're spending a little bit more in early retirement, going down in mid-retirement, and then down in late retirement. From an income perspective, they're drawing more from their registered accounts early, then shifting to their TFSA a little bit earlier as well. Their net worth goes down a little bit faster in early retirement. So here's the risk, is that we're drawing down obviously more heavily in that early retirement phase, but it still looks pretty good for the rest of retirement. They've still got quite a healthy TFSA that they can fall back on if they have some higher inflation rates or lower investment returns. But success rate does look a little bit lower. So before I think it was 93%, now we're at 87%, a little bit more risk of running out of money in earlier and mid-retirement if they face some really poor investment returns or high inflation rates in those first 10 years. So we do want a little bit flexible with that early retirement spending. But the nice thing is that overall, the plan looks quite similar, but now they're spending $81,000 a year in early retirement, $21,000 on discretionary, $60,000 on core spending, and then in late retirement, we've dialed that back a little bit. So if we were going to pick a retirement plan for Mike and Mary to focus on, I mean, which one do you think they're going to choose? Are they going to pick the one that have $72,000 a year right across with the same overall net worth and success rate? Or are they going to pick the one that front loads that retirement spending? Obviously, they're going to pick the one with the higher retirement spending in early retirement when they can get the most value out of those dollars. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you can see why splitting your retirement spending into 3 phases can create a lot of value and a lot of extra spending in early retirement. If you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend creating a detailed retirement plan. If you are 5 to 10 years from retirement or even in retirement and you don't have a retirement plan created yet, definitely try out adviice.ca. And if you need extra help, definitely reach out to us. We'd love to help you create a detailed retirement plan. Thanks for watching.